I don't do anything by halves. The battles turn into wars, and the wars into Armageddons. Worlds burn in my wake. I become a dark legend, a name to frighten monsters and children alike. And I just step over all the bodies and keep walking, never looking back. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the 50th anniversary special, Hunters of the Burning Stone, the Doctor Who magazine 50th anniversary to Doctor Who, written by Scott Gray and is with art by Martin Gurguthrie? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Gurguthrie. This was to celebrate, of course, the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, and this story does it in a specific way. For you see, most stories will celebrate the entire years of the entire concept of Doctor Who as a whole, the time traveling, the many faces, and have like a multi-Doctor story, as we've seen in the 5 Doctors, the 2 Doctors, and most recently the Day of the Doctors. But here, this does something a bit different. It does a direct sequel, to a sense, to the original story, An Unearthly Child, with many themes and concept playing off ideas that were brought up there. In case in point, this story sees the return of Ian and Barbara, who last made their appearance in The Chase. Was it The Chase? Yeah, it was The Chase. With the first Doctor, Vicky, and also that story also introduced what's his name? Stephen. So, yeah, it was kind of a big deal, and it was left as a kind of a shock twist at the end of one of the issues, if I can find it. It's a really big, important deal. It also deals with other concept that was brought upon in Unearthly Child. Sorry, I'm like half distracted here. There you go. Got Ian and Barbara over there, who, for those of you who don't know, are the first human companions of the Doctor. If you, of course, you have Susan. If you don't count Susan as the first companion, Ian and Barbara are technically the first companions. And it also, again, like I said, it deals with these concepts, with the villains as well being something connected to an unearthly child. What do I mean by that? Well, we'll find out when we get into the story. Again, as well, with it being comic books, it also ties into the larger Doctor Who magazine canonically, which ties into a previous comic we talked about, which is actually in this book, part of it, The Broken Man. So, it ties in with little elements, and it also concludes the story arc in the Doctor Who magazine about this psychic metal that seems to be appearing throughout all of time and space. And there's a question, what burdens a man, what's buried a man throughout history? Sort of like Doctor Who throughout history, Bad Wolf kind of a sense. It does a very similar thing to that. Now, I can't actually judge how this deals with those concepts in a story arc level, because I've only read one story within this story arc, and that is The Broken Man. So whether this story pays off all of those storylines, I have no idea. But this is my opinions on the Hunters of the Burning Stone 50th anniversary special. This comic book, this print of it, is this really massive book. I mean, look at that. That is massive. I should really get the other comic books to compare it to. But yeah, so essentially what happens is that at the start we see a spacecraft, a Sontaran spacecraft, which is actually run by pirates who killed a bunch of Sontarans. We see the Doctor really earlier on in the story, the 11th Doctor in the story. And I love how we get this really kind of dark aspect of the Doctor at the start of it, and it does kind of foreshadow events where the Doctor, he basically has no time to waste, where he just aggressively knocks a guy out because he didn't spare the Sontarans that he murdered to get the ship. And on his ship, he has this something that the Doctor's looking for, something that the Doctor's after. The Doctor, at this point in his timeline, has been erasing himself throughout history. And here, when he's doing this, he has found this this massive psychic object, part of this psychic metal that's been following him through space and time. Whilst this is going on, we also see the advantages of this city, which has apparently appeared in another comic book of the Doctor Who magazine, but I haven't read, I believe it's called Chronopolis. And we get the introduction of this character called Miss Ghost, who I think also appeared in a previous story. And she basically pretends to be a ship, what do you call them? Looking at the ship to make sure that everything is up to date and stuff. But in actuality, she is there to steal a vital material, a part of this psychic metal, only for that ship to be suddenly attacked upon by these creatures, these warrior races with burning faces, and they have come down in this armada. They seem to have the armor seem to be made up of this psychic metal, and they seem to be just wanting more, and they have this thirst, this hunger to find more of this metal, but they don't know the word metal. In fact, they call it the burning stone. They are the hunters of the burning stone. And part one ends with the Doctor actually going into the metal cube of the psychic metal and finding himself suddenly surrounded by Ian and Barbara Chesterton. These scenes with the Doctor actually take place in 1965, which was where we left off Barbara and Ian. And for some reason, these crew have kidnapped Ian and Barbara to and put them in this psychic metal, in this sort of prison per se, where they've forgotten about their lives per se of the Doctor, and the Doctor has to basically remember them. And the majority of the story, they take up the companion role. They reintroduce themselves as companions. Now, in terms of writing, it is kind of a stretch. I can't really see the original actors, William Russell and Jacqueline Hill, saying these lines per se. I can see the adventures of space and time maybe portraying them. Also as well, sometimes the art really captures the actors, especially Matt Smith. However, again, especially with William Russell, sometimes the art looks like a completely different person. And with Ian Chesterton having a blue suit with a red tie, sometimes it does feel like the 10th Doctor is the companion of the story. And so the Doctor, Barbara and Ian go to investigate, and they have this whole dilemma of like, are you really the Doctor? We kind of get a similar situation to An Unearthly Child, where Barbara kind of is a believer and Ian is the skeptic. He does not believe at first that this Doctor is the same man, the same old man that they met all those years ago. Or at least for them it would be like a few months ago at least. So they can't really picture it in their head that this is the same man. Because of course he looks and acts completely different after regenerating 12 times. And so that's part of the dilemma at the first half, and we get some of my favourite scenes include Ian and Barbara's reaction to the new TARDIS. And the Doctor's like, you want to do some tidying up and some paint job, and everybody is on your back. You know, it's my property. That's a great line, and the tension really heightens up. But the main interest of the story comes in a little bit later when we get introduced to some of the main villains of the stories. We have these creatures known as the Prometheans. At least I think they're called the Prometheans. These kind of weird meditating with aliens with thin limbs. They seem to be made up of this psychic metal. In fact, they seem to be the sole creator. These godlike entities that seem to grant godlike powers to individuals using this psychic metal. And they also have the ability to basically scan through space and time. And they once, at the very earliest point in human history, watched its development, watched its history unfold, and thought that humanity might not be a species worth looking into. Until a singular event happened. That is when the Doctor, Susan, Ian and Barbara went to the caveman times in the second episode of An Unearthly Child. Yes, the whole idea of the aliens is that they see the Doctor and their interactions with the events of humanity, and they see how they influenced the people, how they made them help them discover fire, how they told them how unity is better than separation, how a bunch of people can combat a smaller foe, how they also taught them the act of sabotage with subterfuge with the skulls that burn and they pretend to be their gods. And so these cavemen Prometheans took a great interest in these cavemen. When the Doctor, Ian, Barbara and Susan left at the end of An Unearthly Child, these creatures basically watched the first story of Doctor Who and thought that basically the Doctor's journey of advancing these humans was unfinished. And the second cliffhanger of the story is where we discover the hunters are actually the same cavemen from An Unearthly Child. Yes, one of the main villains of this story is Zar from the first Doctor Who story of all time, making it a complete direct sequel to An Unearthly Child. That is how you celebrate a 50th anniversary. And what I like about this story is that it deals with this concept in two fronts. It deals with the aftermath of An Unearthly Child in two separate ways. It deals with it in the sense of how these aliens see these humans, and they basically see the human side, and they thought that the Doctor didn't really finish their development, their process. The Doctor helped them, but then just abandoned them, leaving humanity, or at least at that point in their history, lacking of some degree. So the Prometheans basically gave them this psychic metal, and the Tsar and his wife, his lady, and her father, they basically became this master tribe that basically ruled Earth during that time. However, they needed more psychic metal to prolong their empire, so they actually go out into space. And there's this weird detail about that their travels warp space and time. So for them, it's only been like a few months, a few years, but in actuality, it's been like trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of years into the future. And I don't think the cavemen actually discover this. So it's just a really strange detail that they added in. And we also then see it from the Ian and Barbara and the Doctor's point of view, where the Doctor basically has this emotion, something that's dragging him down, something that when he sees Ian and Barbara, something kind of reminds him of something. There's even a scene where he kind of has an outburst at Ian, and Ian is like, "You're not the Doctor." The Doctor would come up with much more interesting insults, and the Doctor's just like, give me time and let me find my thesaurus, which is in some ways out of character for the 11th Doctor to be so uncharacteristically angry at someone for seemingly doing very little. However, I feel like the story makes a great case for why the Doctor acts so unusual when Ian and Barbara come into the narrative. Although we do get some really great quirky moments with the Doctor in this story. There's a great moment where he basically disguises them in hoods and cloaks. Basically, it's like, we don't want to attract attention, only to use a sonic screwdriver. And when Ian asks what he's doing, the Doctor replies with gaining some attention. And it's like, hold on, that's you told us that's not what we want. That's not what we want to have. And then some really great quirky moments and stuff like that. But well, I do really like the 11th Doctor, Ian and Barbara's interaction here. Like I said, the writing here is not strong enough, or at least it's not similar to how Ian and Barbara were written in the classic series, so that you'll justify them and put you into your head that these characters are the same. But just on like name value, they work enough. Barbara actually gets separated early on when Miss Ghost comes over and basically threatens the Doctor. And we actually learn that Miss Ghost is actually Abigail Lake from A Broken Man. She is the daughter character of, what was that guy called? Adrian Lake? What was that guy's name? I think it was like Adrian. I'm sure it was like Adrian Lake. Something like that. I honestly cannot remember. Da, 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 da. 1 second. This is kind of a break. Patrick Lake. Sorry, Patrick Lake. We also see Patrick Lake actually return as an old man. Again, it doesn't make much sense to say because this story is supposed to be set like in the distant future. Or at least I presume it's set in the distant future. And like Abigail is like a young woman and her father, Patrick, is an elderly man. And we also then have these psychic creatures kidnap these characters, and we basically learn what happens. Basically, Patrick Lake and the FBI and MI6 agent from A Broken Man, basically after the events of The Broken Man, Patrick basically became grief-burdened, and he wanted, to act first against alien encounters. So these two men basically created a new group. There's a great shout out between Torchwood and UNIT in this story as well, and they basically explain that them two organizations were essentially created as a deterrent, a defense system, after the aliens have already attacked Earth per se. But now they're actually deciding to create a new alien intervention force, one that actually goes out into space and fights the aliens on their own turf before they can be a threat to Earth, before they can actually become a threat to society of the human race. And so, and we basically learned through this, the Doctor, Ian, and Patrick gets caught up with the psychic lake, as Barbara is with Abigail, and they have this conversation. I like how like Barbara, like in the classic series, she gets kidnapped, but then she reasons with Abigail and they become kind of friends, and then they kind of go on a journey to find and essentially save our main characters. That does though kind of mean that Barbara is left out of the main interesting aspect of this story, and that is the Doctor reconfronting his ideology, his identity during his time with Ian and Barbara, because after the Doctor blocks the psychic connection of Patrick Lake and he stopped having his flashback, the Doctor has this, basically realizes that the Prometheans have this ship, and using Zar's his primordial memory, his early man, his primeval mindset, they can actually now take over the Earth by basically transforming humans into beings that have similar beliefs, similar ideologies, similar carnage, shall we say, to Zar and the tribe of Gum. But they do try to distract the Doctor by sending him in his own psychic prison. And this is where, I think it's in part 5, the most interesting aspect of the story, in which the Doctor is essentially showing Ian all of his memories through time and space. And we get brilliant images from both the classic and the revived era of just these great and powerful moments. But the Doctor basically, it's like, they have this great conversation where Ian is just like, Doctor, you influenced me and Barbara so much, you made our lives so much better. And the Doctor's like, no, can't you see what it's actually showing you, what actually happened? That's not what happened at all. You made me a better person, with an actual spot-on reference to the scene in which the Doctor was going to leave Zar left for dead. He was going to kill him and so they can get and save his skin. However, it was Ian that stopped him, Ian and Barbara that stopped him and basically taught him kindness, compassion, and that even when at the darkest times you should always care for the weak, care for the injured, and hope for the best of life and humanity. And it's there that the Doctor's like, even then I was greedy, I was cowardly. And the Doctor also mentions Skaro in Daleks. And he also then mentions how he almost chucked out Ian and Barbara in the state of the edge of destruction. So it ties in like the first 3 trilogy stories. And then the Doctor also is like, it's not until we had an adventure with Marco Polo did we then start to really enjoy our company. Which this story, I feel like Scott Gray here is essentially saying that Marco Polo is his favourite first Doctor story. There is that kind of, when he says that, it kind of is like, oh yeah, Marco Polo was the first story where our characters really started to like and have interest in developments between each other. But also, the Doctor also kind of feels this kind of overwhelming guilt because during his battles, there have been many people that he has failed to save. In that speech that I did at the start of the video, the Doctor, he knows that he hasn't saved everybody. Sometimes he's even made situations worse, and people would have died in which cases which they wouldn't have. And the Doctor basically blames himself, takes the responsibility on his shoulders, only for Ian to tell him, no, Doctor, that's not true. If you're going to learn anything from me, Doctor, learn this. You are done so much better than you have done bad. And that has more than made up for it. And we get this scene where the Doctor is crying. It looks like it's from something. I believe it's from the Rings of McEdam. And you see the Doctor have a single tear. Oh. Yeah, like I said, can you see what I mean by Ian Chesterton? That is David Tennant. That is not William Russell, that is David Tennant. Also, Seventh Doctor and the zombies in The Curse of Fendrick. The Second Doctor and the Yeti. Which again ties in with the Great Intelligence, which is again really strange because he also was in The Name of the Doctor, so that's bizarre. And essentially, everybody now on Earth can't evolve anymore. They cannot change. They have to basically put in the same mindset of the cavemen back in the tribe of Gum. And the Doctor gets this idea after Barbara mentioned something that's about they can never change. And so the Doctor actually goes back in time and actually finds himself in the junkyard in episode 1 of An Unearthly Child, and he goes to the original TARDIS where he does something to it, and the Doctor comes back into the modern setting for the story, and basically these creatures create these subliminal messages to help humanity develop in a way where they can easily control their minds. In this particular circumstances, it's the sun. The tribe of Gum worship the sun gods, so they made them, the Prometheans basically act as the son of Orb, the god of sun, and the Doctor essentially comes into the future and it's just like, right, I can easily destroy you with the metal psychic that I have. And they're like, well, it's useless to you. You don't have any symbols. You don't have any power. To which the Doctor proclaims, yes, I do. As the memory of the TARDIS, the blue box, to the point where it will be so embedded in human memory that it would actually inspire the design of a real-life police telephone box, and therefore the TARDIS design is an endless paradox. And this then destroys the Prometheans, with the actual ending of the story having Ian and Barbara basically confront to Tsar and his men that we taught you so much back in then. So, and we basically taught you kindness and compassion after that moment where we would have left you for dead, but we didn't. We actually helped you. We spared your lives. We looked after your wounds as you were injured. And so the tribe of Gum actually go against the Prometheans and have this massive battle to which Dr. Ian and Barbara escape from. The Doctor actually threatens this new agency, the Unit Torchwood-inspired agency. Here it gets the name Wonderland, which I don't actually know if that's a connection to anything. The way that they did it, the way that the scene is played out, it seems like it's like, oh my god, this is the origins of the Wonderland agency. Whether that ties into like later Doctor Who magazines, or it was whether the Wonderland Corporation happened before and previously, again, I don't know. But actually, what this story actually has two groundbreaking moments at the very finale, which is a very important part of the Doctor Who canon. One, Ian and Barbara get married. Yeah, the Doctor now has two known married couples, Ian and Barbara, and as well as Amy and Rory. Now officially stating them as a couple. I don't know how I feel about a couple. I do really like in the classic series that they were just really great friends. But it's nothing that I would lose sleep over. But the other one is probably a little strange. It turns out that the 11th Doctor actually was the one that broke the chameleon circuit and answered the question of the first Doctor in An Unearthly Child, where it's staying as a police box is very disturbing. Something is really odd with that. And here we actually get a conclusion to a 50-year-old story arc. And it turns out that the 11th Doctor actually froze the chameleon circuit so that it's a police box, so that the police box imagery would go through in time and space and become embedded in human memory, so that the Doctor can then save the day in this timeline, in this time zone. And so, Baddies Hunters of the Burning Stone. Overall, this has some really great highlights. However, I did feel like I was missing out, but I didn't have the full concept of the story arc embedded within it. There were many aspects where the story is like, you should know this. Oh, look at that. You recognize that. And as somebody who doesn't keep up with the Doctor Who magazines, I was like, no! I don't know who Miss Ghost is. I don't know what Tonopolis is. I don't know about these burning metal, not the burning metals, the psychic metals, which, okay, I do know a bit about it thanks to Broken Man. But, yeah, it's a big issue because it really doesn't feel, you don't feel full by the end of it. You do feel like you're missing out. It does feel like you're only getting a bit of a story. But for the bits that you do get, they're phenomenal, with some great scenes, some great character development, and some great acknowledgement to the past, whilst also telling us a new narrative about the Doctor and his relationship with Ian and Barbara, his first companions, and how they've affected him, as well as the outer universe on what happened to the cavemen after the events of An Unearthly Child. And so this is probably it's probably not the best of the anniversaries, the 50th anniversary specifically. However, it is the best anniversary of the anniversaries. Does that make any sense? It's not a better story than the others, but it's a better anniversary than the others, because it actually pays tribute to the actual first episode that Doctor Who, that's kicked off the entire franchise. So this was kind of a great break into memory lane. So that is the Hunters of the Burning Stone. So join me next time, where the 11th hour is over now, and the clock is striking 12. So join me next time for the time of the Doctor, as well as some little short advertising, shall we say. So I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon for that. Ta-da!